All right, welcome back to our Chaotic Stupid AOS podcast. This is Dan. With me is
Tom.
And we have a guest this one with our friend
Sophie,
who is here as our new to AOS commentator for this little adventure. So this episode, I guess we'll dive into what is or has been announced coming down the pike from GW.
The big news.
So, Warcry looks like it'll be quite a bit of fun.
I'm on the fence.
Not sold yet?
Not sold. No, I was pretty excited about it just based on the models, but after watching a couple of videos on how it plays and stuff, I'm not super excited
I haven't
about
seen
it.
any play on it, so my excitement is only models.
Mm-hmm. No, the models are very good.
I think, yeah.
The play looks like a lot of just like push your model towards another model, hit it.
Which is exactly what people said about AOS at the beginning.
True.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, I did do a demo game.
And AOS did suck at the beginning, so there we go.
I mean, yeah, but a lot of the fundamentals are we still use today. I did do a demo.
I did a demo too.
And I found that the gameplay looks like one of those things where it seems simple, but then you can get a lot of tactical depth later on.
There's definitely a lot of like combos you can build up. Maybe that's once you like understand your warband more and know who's got to trigger off whose abilities and blah blah blah. Then maybe it'll be better. But
I think we're gonna do at least a couple as a Chaotic Stupid videos for it, because I know I just really want the models.
Yeah. I'm gonna buy models and play for sure.
And the box set has cool terrain.
Yes. The box set does not have the warbands I would really want, so I don't know if I'll get the box set.
So for the warbands, there's only one I don't want.
Really?
Yeah.
Who?
The one with all the skull masks.
Oh, you don't like
it
that?
doesn't do it for me.
With like they like cut off their own faces and put them on their belts.
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
No, they just lift up the skull mask and there's like some like Nedry looking guy underneath, like, oh hey guys.
No,
I'm
but
here
they
for
look like that
chaos.
because they cut their faces off.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Eh.
I really want
The models don't do it for me.
The Cypher,
Cypher Lords.
Yeah.
For me, it's the crow people.
They look cool too.
so
Yeah,
cool.
I think
The snake squeezers, pretty
Yeah.
cool as well.
every other of those warbands is like a solid 7 to 8 out of 10 for models for me. I think they're all great. I like the two that come in the kit.
I'm not.
I
The
like
Conans are a little bit bland to me.
I like them. I might convert them by cutting all their human feet off and putting on beastman legs.
Oh.
And just be like, nope, these are actually just beastmen.
It might be a bit specific, but I'm generally not a fan of when they do weapons with like teeth on them as well.
I mean,
Like, nah.
these guys haven't even invented the sharpened rock yet.
Yes, if you've got to hit
They're
someone,
a
hit
little
someone with a
behind.
tooth, just go
Yeah,
for it, I
I mean-
guess.
You work with what you got.
Yeah. I do appreciate the fact that there's a Chaos Dwarf in the other crew.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty solid.
And putting down like an army of Big Daddy looking folks is pretty cool.
Right.
I think I might paint mine not red though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't need to be red.
Yeah,
Everyone's going to be red.
I think red looks good, but I don't know.
I might do the crow people as like tropical parrot people. All kinds of
That
bright,
would be funny.
Wild.
bright colored feathers everywhere. Lizard men style.
Yeah. I think the Cypher Lords are some really cool kits.
Yeah.
I like that. I pre-ordered those as well.
They're my favorite of the whole bunch.
I like the way as well none of the warbands are specifically a Chaos God's warband, but they'll have like little hints of which
Right.
god they
Right.
probably dig. Like the Cypher Lords are Zeech
They've got
ninjas, obviously.
Zinch?
Zeech ninjas,
Yeah.
yeah. They've got all like Egyptian style stuff, which is
I
pretty
took them as
Zeech-y.
more Slanesh.
No.
Mm-mm.
Definitely
No.
seem to favor the kind of, I don't know, more sleek appearance that I would associate with Slanesh.
Yeah, but they've got hints of stuff that have appeared on other Zeech models before,
True,
like
true.
Thousand Suns touches to
Yep.
them and all that kind of stuff.
All right. I also like the ones that just look like a bunch of gladiators. The one with the guy's got like the snake on him.
Yeah. The snake
Yeah.
squeezers.
Yeah.
They have like Spartan hats. and
Yeah.
stuff.
They've all got very kind of like Roman gladiatorium sort of appearance, which
Mhm.
I dig.
I just dig in the crow people. There's a dude who just like loves to dress up as a crow. And has a little stilt
Or in
song
your
to
case,
make him more-
tropical
exactly.
parrot. You
Yeah.
should do them as different parrots.
Okay, yeah.
Like do a
like a macaw.
Well, we'll do like a scarlet macaw, a blue
Mhm.
macaw. Yeah, I mean, do some parrot research.
The actual bird guy's just gonna be bright
Or
green.
do them all as like, just paint them all white and call them,
Dove people.
yeah, no, people. There's a lot of white birds. We're the battle group of the pigeon.
Mm.
Paint them all kind of a nice light gray.
Man, that's our deep insight on Warcry,
Yeah.
I guess. The models
Um,
look really cool. I could be convinced by the gameplay too. I just haven't been yet.
yeah, I think we'll do a couple on the channel of, just play through games of it, see how it goes. Maybe do a campaign if we all really dig it.
I really suggested a campaign of us doing it, and then the loser having to smash a member of the war band with the big chopper downstairs.
Oh man!
Yeah.
All right, I'll pick one real crappy. So designate
You're
him
like,
to be
yeah,
smashed.
no, it's got to be
Awesome.
random.
Oh
It's
no!
Yeah.
The parrot
At
man.
the end, if you lose, you
Yeah.
roll a D, whatever
Yeah.
models you have, and then one of them gets the axe.
There's one thing that I've seen about it. It doesn't seem like there's much customization. You're not like buying new kit in the campaign, like kit for models. You just kind of add some new guy. who
Yeah,
just-
there's no
is the way he
Mordheim
is on the
sprue
card.
release for
Right.
it that just has all
But even
kinds of
not
junk.
even just customizing the models, like customizing what equipment they have. It seems like each guy is just has this card. That's what they have. You don't really.
So it's a little
Change
more
anything
like
about
what is it?
Kill team.
Yeah, or not Kill Team. What's the Age of Sigmar one with the cards? My mind's drawing.
Oh,
Shadespire.
Shadespire,
Shades-
Nightbolt,
yeah.
Beast, Grave.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think it's Underworlds. Is the other
Underworld,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of in a spot between Underworlds
And Kill
and
Team.
Mordheim.
Oh, okay.
It's I think Kill Team's more on the Mordheim side of things, but it's
Right.
not as in depth. I think Warcry looks like. I think we're all gonna end up buying it.
Yeah, I mean, and they're bringing out the cards so you can play with a bunch of other AOS factions as well. So I'll have a little ghost crew and
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see yet. What I'd love to see is something more Mordheimy, where you have different loadouts and different weapons do different things. But I think we're still waiting for a game that's a proper, Frostgrave.
right, GW Frostgrave.
GW Frostgrave, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's gonna be fun though.
yeah,
Looking
and
forward
it'll
to
be
it.
fun to bash models together, and they're sweet models. They'll be fun to paint.
Yeah.
It's always nice to pick up something that you're not currently painting and bang out, 8 to 10 models real quick.
Indeed.
So also we got spoilers for 2 upcoming Army books.
Yeah. Pretty
So,
exciting ones.
Do we start with the big one first?
Big one. The one that's going to change the entire order faction, basically.
Yeah.
Like
All
last
right.
time as we were going through the GHB, we said the order section of the book is just kind of a mess.
It's garbage, yeah.
It's just
Well,
a mess. You have
first
these
of all,
tiny factions.
our last podcast, we called both of these sort of.
I'm not convinced.
So this one, we said what they need to do is shove all the order sub-factions together and just say, here's a brick of order stuff. And they are releasing a book of free cities.
Yeah.
Which they've advertised has elves, dwarves, or elves, dwarden,
It's basically
Gradrin.
Firestorm, though, for anyone who had the Firestorm campaign
Right.
book. All of the 7 city allegiances and that, you get all of those expanded in cool ways again. So if anyone didn't know, those were like 7 cities, Anvil, Guard, Greywater, Fastness, things like that.
Yeah.
Had like, these few factions of order stuff live in this city, and you can pick what you want among them.
Yeah, so you could take your allegiance as that
as a
city.
Greywater Fastness.
What I would love to see is a custom free city
Mm-hmm.
where you can take, in a lot of army books right now, you can open them up and, you can take the, Daughters of Cain have several temples, but they also have options to take your own temple,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a group of things to pick from, which is cool. I would love if they did that with the free cities.
Yeah,
Allowed you to
build your
just
own.
build your own.
Little pepperoni here, a little mushroom there.
Yeah, some pineapple on top. Yeah. Just mix it all up. Throw some anchovies and pineapples together and see what happens.
The pineapple is definitely the great swords with their frilly cod pieces.
I actually was thinking Phoenix Guard would be the pineapple.
Anyway, it looks super fun. The book has the great sword on the cover.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's kind of weird to me that they're doing it though, because it's like kind of canonizing in AOS a bunch of stuff that I thought they were trying to write out the game forever, like a lot of old aesthetic tropes that are very like old worldy.
Yeah.
Like the Germanic looking humans and like Tolkien-ish elves kind of thing.
But if you read through like Malign Portents and some of the other lore stuff, when they go into free cities, it's not populated with Stormcast. Stormcast are the...
Thank God.
Yeah, man. Could you imagine Stormcast sitting around a fire?
No, that'd be like the Nox.
Yeah, like Stormcast small talk has got to be the worst thing in the world. Like, hey, how many times have you come back?
How many times did you praise Sigmar today?
Yeah.
Praise be to Sigmar.
Imagine just the shops in the towns. A Stormcast barista, it wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't work.
You just have like a Stormcast like oil armor shop and that would be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No delicacy to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, all the cities they talk about in the lore have been populated with mixed nuts of the General Order factions.
I guess going even further back, I'm surprised that they wrote all of this into the lore. Rather, at the inception of Age of Sigmar, it seemed like they wanted to get rid of all of the old, I guess, like non-copyrightable tropes.
Right. I mean, the cod pieces are a very distinct army design,
right?
From
like Germanic,
Germanic Landsknecht Knights. Yeah.
And then you've got like the dispossessed will be in there, so that's like very basic Tolkien dwarfs and
right
kind of stuff. Anyway,
which I've always found funny that they went with a German foot soldier instead of a proper English foot soldier as a native of that country.
A Welsh bowman, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, who doesn't want to do an army of a bunch of like bowl cut peasantry?
Well, that was old Bretonia, right?
Yeah, Bretonian.
Old Bretonia was the poxy.
I just put a bunch of those
peasants.
Models together, and they are like, some of them are just so silly. Like, one of the guys screaming and his tongue's hanging out of his mouth, and one of the options for one of the horn blowers for the basic men at arms unit has like literally a jester's cap on. It's just, they're outrageous.
Yeah, they used to put little bits of fun in
Yeah.
there.
I like that there's, on the Bretonian command sprue, there's a couple of fat ones.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a couple of pudgy dudes in your army. It just breaks it up a bit, Here's Jimmy, he likes cake.
Anyway, that is also, I'm definitely not opposed to all of these things staying in the game because I love them all, and it's sweet that they're being meshed together into this new cities book. So
yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I see it going as one of two ways. They either kind of mix the factions together that belong together from traditional 8th edition and all of Warhammer Fantasy that came before, high elves with high elves, dark elves with dark elves, dwarves with dwarves, or they mix it all up and allow you to just take...
I think a lot more mixed, but like semi-restrictive groups that you can have from each city. That's what Firestorm was, at least. I'm assuming something similar to that. But like, yeah, way better built out rules for all the cities.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that you could do is really kind of nuts. I mean, Iron Breakers or Iron Drakes, the shooting guys from dwarves, are pretty solid.
I mean, Mixed Order is a good army.
Yeah,
right?
Mixed Order is still a good army.
Now you're taking
giving
Mixed
it more
Order
rules.
and giving it an allegiance ability.
Yeah, I mean, it could be... I'm looking forward to designing my own free city.
Yeah.
I want to go full fluff on this and have very specific races that inhabit my free city. I'll come up with a name for it. I'll paint them all in the same color scheme. And I'm going to geek out hard if they let me.
Such a nerd.
Yeah, I've had these models on shelves for years.
Mm-hmm. Then I'm just going to overrun it with a bunch of ghosts. And slave them all.
Till you hit that wall of Phoenix Guard you just can't do anything about.
I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
That's Free Cities.
Yeah.
And we have one more book. confirmed.
The other one that we mentioned while we were doing the review was the
Did we
Iron
actually?
Jaws. Yeah,
I
I said,
must have recalled this.
well, it was Bone Splitters was the one that I said needed a lot of help.
Got it.
So looks like they're combining Iron Jaws and Bone Splitters. And I would hope they toss what's left of the greenskins in there.
No, written out of the game, for sure. There's no way they're going to toss in that old stuff. I think it's very specifically Iron Jaws plus Bone Splitters. It's called the Orc War Clans, right? And apparently there's a separate allegiance abilities for if you want to run just Iron Jaws or Bone Splitters, or then one that combines them both.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what I think they said in the article.
All the kits left in greenskins that haven't been cherry picked into other factions are pretty old.
Yeah.
You've got the Goblins they're hilariously bad plastic kit.
Mm-hmm.
The Goblin Wolf Riders are riding
around. Those old goblins with like giant heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, nobody's going to be sad to see
the wolves that look like they were drawn by a 10-year-old.
The only person who's going to be sad to see them go
is me.
That dude who painted 120 garbage goblins.
Yeah, that's me.
Is that you?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
So you're sad.
Yeah, I'm a little sad. I mean, I kind of have always found the appeal of derpy looking models. You know,
they just resonate with you.
Yeah,
as a derpy looking person.
Yeah, I like derpy stuff. So, you know, those big kind of like goofy looking nose grots.
You just want an army of goofy grots and fat Bretonians.
Yeah, exactly. I want a snotling pump wagon to still be relevant again. I want really what it's all about for anybody who's spent any time watching what's happened in AOS to Orcs, especially, is the Orc War Boss is incredible buff unit for all Orcs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his buff is better than any other war boss you can take. And he's got slowly putting this smaller and smaller patch of only affecting different... So the Orc War Boss provides a amazing buff to all Orcs. And they've kept putting...
So the guy who can wave a flag?
No. It's the guy on the pig.
Oh, guy on the pig.
Yeah, he allows all Orcs within some amount of inches, like 12 or 18, to make an additional, double, or adds one attack to every attack they make.
Okay.
Which is fantastic. It's what the Orc Mega Boss does, but you have to roll for it, so there's some statistical oddity that can happen.
Sure, but so he's going to be gone.
Yeah, he's absolutely going to be gone.
Which is like a good... You'll want to take armies that you're giving like a bunch of really good new rules to and kind of have this loophole where this old janky model that gives a buff that's way too good is also going to make their way in there and just kind of break the army.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
You'd have to go pretty far to make Iron Jaws like brokenly good, but
right, they can use some buffs.
Oh, they can use buffs.
I mean, you'd have to go really far to make Bone Splitters any good.
They just have to bring back the Cunning Ruck, right? The 300 shots per turn.
It never went anywhere. It's just not that good.
Yeah, didn't they just priced everything up to get rid of it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
But, I mean, the other thing is, like, Savage Orcs don't really have a... I mean, what are they? They're a bad hammer or a bad anvil units?
I've never seen a unit of Savage Orcs. It wasn't just shooting. I've seen shooty Savage Orcs.
Yeah, but the guys with the actual weapons aren't.
No.
They're scaring nobody.
No.
Because what used to make Savage Orcs an 8th was that 5-up, feel no pain, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yes.
You just run them with a shaman, and all of a sudden they got really good. The
yeah,
shrunken head.
Big unit, Biggins.
Yeah. Yep. Toughness 4 with a 5-up, feel no pain. Yeah, they were fantastic.
The old days.
Yeah.
Toughness 4.
Yeah, right. Well, when everything's toughness 3, toughness 4 is amazing.
Yeah, that's just not a thing anymore.
Nope. Okay, so...
well, there were some other reveals, too. You see the new Ogre model?
Yeah, but I didn't care.
You didn't care?
Not really.
That means there's an Ogre book coming soon.
No, that's what the Ogre players want.
Yeah,
I'm sure Ogre's going to be just as deadly as they've ever been.
But no, I think they're going to be deadlier than they've ever been.
Oh no!
We're going to get a new book with that new tyrant model, which is a sweet model.
If they're 5 times as deadly as they are now, what's 5 times 0?
Pretty close to 0 still.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not going to make any calls on ogres. I think for those who love the army, they're a really cool army, honestly. Just big dudes running around smashing stuff. I think that's great.
Yeah, and if you really love an army, it's enough to just get a tome. It doesn't have to be like the killer tome.
Yeah.
If it's a tome that means your army's going to stay in the game.
Right.
Then
I'm not sure.
Become Tomb Kings, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, nobody wants to end up in that, like, poor little kid table of Tomb Kings in Bretonia.
Right, where you have to, like, ask everybody's permission whether you're allowed to play.
Yeah.
Can I play with my army, please?
I had enough Bretonians that I've fielded 2,000-point games of Bretonians and been like, hey, do you mind if I play Bretonians? And they're like, oh, I don't mind. Do you mind if I play Caradron? And I'm like, no, I don't really care what you play, because Bretonians right now only do one thing, which is run at you really hard and then
bounce off.
No, you can do this funny tactic where you have multiple lance formations that hit and then retreat and then hit and retreat. So you keep them pinned by using multiple units to keep knocking into them because they get a bunch of buffs on the charge. And they actually won, which was really funny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But, I mean, that was good dice rolling on my part.
Bretonians are never coming back. They've turned into flesh-eating ghouls now anyway.
Yeah,
so.
they literally wrote them as the flesh-eater courts. I would like to see knights at least come back.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to bring back free peoples, bring back the knights.
And
Because then you can use the models.
Sure. The other thing that was like not necessarily revealed but teased was there was a video they put out about a new death faction, basically. There's some character that everybody's trying to guess who this character is, saying that his army is coming soon or something.
And we all know who it is.
Who?
People
are saying that it's Cetra, but it's not going to be Cetra.
It's going to be Cetra.
What? They're not going to bring... We just said Tomb Kings are not coming back.
Yeah, but Cetra could.
Cetra could, with like a different type of undead army, maybe. Like
it doesn't have to be Tomb King based. Yeah, bring Cetra back and have a bunch of like twisted zombie abominations. I mean, so far in the whole zombie world, in the world that we live in of zombies, there are lots of places you can go with zombies. You can have slow...
Well, like undead, there's still like undead tropes that are not...
Yeah, but I mean, just in the zombies.
Just in zombies?
Just in zombies,
there's
you
a
have
unit
a bunch.
of zombies.
Right, which is the slow walker type, the, Walking Dead sort of zombies. But you could have dog zombies. You can't have horse zombies, because apparently...
There's already dog zombies, they're direwolves.
Yeah, sort of.
Go on, more zombies.
But yeah, I mean, you could have like kind of like crazy amalgamation zombies where stuff's been stitched together.
Yeah, like
think the abominations from Warcraft.
Yeah, I was thinking from Malifaux. Did you ever play Malifaux?
No, but I bought a bunch of the models.
Malifaux is Leviticus, and his whole thing is he like stitches dead things together into crazy abominations.
Yeah, I mean, how many crazy guys with a sewing needle do you need for those?
Okay, so Cetra's turned into like crazy Frankenstein.
That'd be great. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, Frankenstein's a zombie. He's like the OG zombie.
Okay. Well,
luckily,
luckily,
what you're reading or watching, because in the book he wasn't.
Yeah, he was actually the doctor, but...
No. But what I'm saying is in the book he was actually highly intelligent, very strong, very fast.
He was fairly intelligent.
Well,
Frankenstein's monster. When you read Mary Shelley's book...
Yeah. I mean... Fairly, he knew multiple languages in a short span of time.
Yeah, he also liked to just go and like sit by a lake and stuff as well.
Yeah, he was...
Oh, yeah. He wasn't the green bolt on the neck.
Yeah, he was more of like the bored retiree than, than a monster.
That book was not what I was expecting. We got into the book review portion of the
show. I know, right?
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I'm giving it a solid 2 out of 5. Would not recommend.
I'd give it a 4 out of 5 myself. I thought it was good. Not the best book I've ever read, but I can see why it became popular. Okay, we have to stop this. All right, so that went right off the rails.
Well, we've said enough things that whatever comes out for Undead, you can claim that we call
exactly. That we're still the prophets of what's coming up next.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
We can just keep making that up. And even if we're wrong, we'll just say that we were... if we do long enough podcasts, nobody will go back and listen to
That's what everyone on podcast seems to do.
Oh, yeah.
Called
absolutely.
it last time. You can check if you want.
Yeah. Somewhere in that last
Like
3
at the
hours.
7-hour mark.
Yeah. Bumps up the listens at least. Send everybody back. Anyway, that was all the news.
Yeah. So this segment, well, I think what we want to focus a lot on this channel of is going to be strategy, tactics, how to play, not necessarily competitively, although we are really aiming at that, because both Tom and myself do play competitively a few times a year.
Yeah.
You know, we're not piling in a car and driving to every tournament within 500 miles, but we'll at least consider every tournament within 300 miles.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Tom's much better at keeping up on that than I am. I'm a little lazy.
I'm good at keeping track of when the tournaments are and then being like, crap, what came up?
Yeah. You always tell me about it. And I say, I have to wash my sheets or something.
But occasionally we show up.
Occasionally we do show up. We show up
and crush people.
We show up to half that we think about going to.
There we go.
We've got Du Bois is our next big one. Are you going to Crossroads?
I'm going to Crossroads.
All right, so you have Crossroads.
Crossroads and Du Bois.
So those are two classically large tournaments for
large competitive.
Yep. Yeah, this will be my first Du Bois, even though I've trained for it multiple times. Never. Oh yeah. In fact, when I played
Put in the miles.
Fantasy, did a bunch of play testing for people, prepping for Du Bois and things like that, and thought I was going a couple of times, and then just kind of had stuff come up, work trips, things like that. So looking forward to it this year. I mean, last year I would have gone, but I ended up in Europe for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was out of town last year as well, but I'm excited for it. Like, apparently, good lists show up. That's great. And the kind of like, I'm not a person who's always like chasing the most competitive list and trying to build the most competitive thing, but I love playing against that stuff. I like to see what all of the armies can do when they're like tuned up to 11, even if it just smashes.
I also like bringing my own list because I feel like if I, put up a good fight against, a net list that's well piloted, then I've done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And
you have the cheesiest net list anyway, so it's...
I don't use the net list. Yes, the net list for Daughters of Cain of running 90 Witches is pretty good.
And just running Daughters of Cain in general is already cheesy enough.
Yeah, you get enough cheese in that
Give
army.
me crap for it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So part of the reason we have Sophie here is to go over some of the strategy and tactics
that I know nothing about because I've never played a single game, never read the rule book. I have a couple of the battle tomes, but I keep on balking at like the armies. Like I was gonna do Daughters of Cain, and then I think you ended up with mine.
Oh yeah,
you bought those off me, and then I was gonna do I think Deepkin, but I never ended up getting those. Now I'm on to the Gits, and I think I'm stuck there because I love squigs. So
and greenskins in general.
Oh yeah.
But we should also point out that you are a gamer. So
yes, I am.
Concepts of games are familiar to you.
Yeah, I am a gamer. Mostly in the Games Workshop realm, 40K, but even that it's more hobby than game. I've played a few 40K though.
Right. So our goal with Sophie here is to give her some essential information that will help her get on the table and not feel completely...
Be laughed off.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, my first time playing Warhammer Fantasy was like, my brain just hurt.
Oh, like old Warhammer Fantasy?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yes.
Okay. So first of all, your brain hurts playing old Warhammer Fantasy
Yes.
because you're basically just playing I'm a Human Calculator for 3 hours.
And you've sat trying to absorb a 300-page rule total before even going into this.
But that aside,
anyway,
it was the trying to get the concepts of the strategy down. And the rule I put for myself is play 30 games and track how you did in 30 games, which I actually did. I actually wrote up battle reports for myself to reference for the first maybe 10. And then after that, it was just a win-loss mark. But anyway, so right now we're going to cover strategy, or what I call strategy, and tactics. So I would say that strategy is essentially more important in AOS than it is in 40K. In 40K, tactics are more important than they are in AOS. So strategy, I would say, is looking at the entire battlefield, assessing the situation, and figuring out what units need to go, how to get your opponent to fight the way that you want them to fight.
Yeah, well, strategy is something you bring into the game with you.
Right.
Like you've seen the scenario, you've seen your opponent's army, and you formed a plan about how you're going to win that scenario. That's your strategy. Your tactics are more
tactics
play
are
to play kind of.
Yeah, how you pile in,
exactly.
Almost what your guys are equipped with and things like that.
Right.
Almost fit into a tactical. I think in 40K, tactics is bigger.
Do I want to match this unit against that unit?
Yeah, your loadout in 40K is so unique per how you equip it, whereas in AOS, I mean, except for a few units where you can pick, swords or halberds or something, pretty much if you see a block of, pick a unit, we'll say, Iron Jaws, Ardboys.
Right.
You know what's in that unit.
Right. Yeah, and there's not so much, I guess, because wounds just carry over in AOS. You're not this is a multi-wound weapon, so I don't want to shoot it at those tiny little guys here.
Right.
You can take a good hammer to just about anything in AOS.
Yeah.
Smash it open.
Oh, that was the game I played against Skaven was that way. We built right before we rolled off to see who got to go to deploy first. I kind of looked at him and said, well, we're just each riveting our chainsaw and charging at each other. Exactly how the game went too.
Yeah.
Who can cause more death?
In AOS, unless you're pretty sure you're just going to kill everything in your opponent's army, you do need to go into that game with a pretty clear idea of this is how I'm going to get more points on the objectives than my opponent.
Right. So strategy is how you control the board, how you, get more death than your opponent at points as well.
Mm-hmm.
And tactics is the kind of the multiplier of how you really achieve it. Your pile-in tricks, your how you deploy, where you deploy, keeping your units together for synergy purposes, what to prioritize when shooting, and things like that. So I consider tactics are more focused around the model. Strategy is the battlefield.
You got that, Sophie? Ready to go?
40%.
Yeah.
We're going in?
Yeah, we're going to go in. So I'd say the first part of strategy would be list building.
It's list building.
I mean, you're free to disagree. These are my opinions.
What? No, I mean, that's the first part of even getting into the game, right? Well, I guess not getting into the game, but it's what you do in all of your time off the table.
Yeah.
It's how you kind of anticipate what's coming up. What games
I think that is the first strategy starts with your list. But where do you start your list? First, you start with your army. And I think that is neither... for me, it is neither tactics or strategy. I pick armies that I think the models look cool.
Right.
Which I have a lot of unpainted armies that I decided the models weren't cool anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just sitting there, nice and gray and assembled, or some of them I'm playing box ammo with, just sitting in boxes.
Is that how you came upon the Gits?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've been an orc person for 40K for years and years and years, and just squigs have always kind of been a humorous part of them. So when they just came in abundance in the Gits, it's that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. For me, picking an army has to be a little of both. I have to like the models, but I also have to know a little about the playstyle and know that I'm going to enjoy that. However cool the models are, I don't necessarily want an army that is just, I push this forward and try and fight.
See,
that's not an army I'm interested in playing.
I have a Beastman army because I think Beastigors are sweet models.
They're sweet models. We said this last time. Beastman was my first army.
Yeah.
I'm a simple man with simple pleasures when it comes to my Warhammer. I want my stuff to look...
I've got to like both.
Yeah.
And models and how it's going to play.
And then what I'll do, much to my own detriment is I will work a list
Mm-hmm.
on the units that I want. So I will prioritize the unit I like more than anything else and figure out how to make it work.
So a good example of this, of my perspective, is Deepkin, right? When they first came out, I was like, I want to buy Deepkin because I love the models. I'm an oceanographer.
Right.
I like fish. They're all like fish riders. Got some sharks in there and a big turtle.
Right.
Loved it. Then I read the book and was like, I can only see one way to really play in a competitive way with this army. And it's just
And
to
it's
like
just
build a bunch of
completely-
eels and push them as fast as I can across the board and
Really?
smash people. And I was like, I'm not so into that.
Yeah, I was wondering what happened with that because
Yeah.
I knew you were deeply into them, like before. Yeah,
deeply.
right? Oh, nice. I knew you were like all in on them, like right when they were released and everything, and then they came out, and then I think the next thing I knew, you were still on Zinch. I'm like,
Yeah, just stuck with each. And then the Ghosts came out, and I was like, Ghosts look amazing. And then I read the rules, and I was like, okay, they still just want to kind of get into combat, but they have way more tricks for like how they're going to move, appear at different parts of the board. So yeah, Deepkin just like looked too one-dimensional to me, even though I was all about getting some sharks on the table,
Right.
etc.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when it comes to building a list out of the armor you've selected,
Mm-hmm.
I think AOS is pretty forgiving.
It's forgiving. Well, especially some armies. There's some armies you can pick it up and like just buy what models you like.
Yeah, and I
Be
mean,
in a pretty good place.
and some armies, like, you can stretch, you can push as hard as you want, and it'll only go so far.
Mm-hmm.
And some armies, you can really just make the wrong decisions.
Right.
Um,
Like when you're just getting into the game, what you like try to build and page up as your first list is kind of a personal choice. You can absolutely do, you know, I'm going to get the models I like, pay them up, and try and make a list out of it. You can end up with a really garbage army that way. That's if you have
Mhm.
any interest in playing
It's usually
competitively, is not going to be a fun time for you. So I'd recommend to like people getting into the game kind of an interim strategy of, you know, I like these models, but I'm going to ask somebody who knows the game, like how do those models become part of an army that actually plays this game
Right.
well?
I think you can
Build around
fit
that.
one unit or somewhere between 200 to 400 points of fun into any list.
Yeah.
So even if your entire list is hyper competitive, you can still splash in something that you really want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, you can waste a
And-
few hundred points for sure.
Yeah, you can just piss away a few hundred points, and it's not. I mean, you're not going to be optimal. You're not going to be competing at that 95% level,
Right.
but you'll be swinging at the 85-90% for sure.
But let's say Sophie said to me, I love trolls and I want to do a whole army out of these trolls, but I still want to be able to like not get smashed by people and enjoy the game. I would say
pick one unit of
Sophie,
trolls.
take some trolls.
Are
But
they
I'm
not
gonna,
that
like-
great? Is that why?
They're great. They're good. It's good to have a unit of stone trolls
Just
in the army. They're
a
good.
unit, not a.
Have a unit. Don't make a whole army of trolls
Right.
because
So-
you're gonna have a bad time.
That's another. So another idea I had. I wanted to do like a Bolt Centaur horde, but I'm thinking probably because they don't have a battle tome probably ever at this point. Like,
They have like Forge World rules.
yeah, oh yeah, they have
Which
that,
have then
but
just been put into the GHB, so that suggests they're kind of.
I'm just wondering if
around
at
for a
this
while.
point it's kind of gonna be a lost cause to try and.
In terms of like long-term playability, like
Yeah.
with the new tomes is definitely the way to go because
Right.
GW's made.
I
the
think going
commitment
for
to
something
them.
like that would be trying to like push Jello into a tube or
Right.
something. Like it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And I've done that with a couple of armies. I mean, there's a reason I have a bunch of mixed order garbage. You know, I have a bunch of wanderers because I
Garbage.
really wanted them to work good, but
Mhm.
I never really. You know, I hit a point where I realized that what I was racking my brain trying to figure out a really good list for it just wasn't really there.
Yeah, I had a little spell of like being interested in Wanderers, and I started
Yeah.
assembling some models, and then I was like, Tom, if if you build all these models and then paint them, and then GW just decides they're not part of the game anymore, how mad are you gonna be?
Yeah. And for me, another thing is not necessarily the models, but some of the rules might really interest me, and I'll get really stuck on it. Like the Sisters of the Thorn.
Yeah, I can shoot twice if
No,
they
no,
stay
no, no,
stunned.
no. That their spell.
Oh,
where
the
you
Sisters of
reflect-
Thorn, not the Shooty Sisters.
They give you like
Yeah.
they give you like +1
I think
save,
reroll
and
saves
then
and
reroll
bounce back
saves, and then you
models.
bounce back on like a 6. So you can have stuff that just can reflect like a ton of wounds back, which would be hilarious.
Yes.
So it's dirty tricks like that that really like appeal to me, and the models are great. So,
Yeah, so that, like, in making your first list or deciding what models to get together for an army, I would say pick some models you like. Pick what models you need to make them work in their own special way, whatever
Yeah.
buff characters you need, then ask somebody what other stuff to build around that to make a good army.
yeah,
Actually, it's really useful to just look through all the scenarios as well and think, I have to be able to compete at these scenarios.
right.
What units need to go in to make that possible.
And another thing I see looking at people's lists, especially for first-time army builders, is that they'll try to spread those out into too many.
Oh yeah.
You know, they'll take 10 of this, 10 of this, 10 of this, 10 of this,
Exactly.
where it's
They want
like
a bit of
just
everything.
pick one and
Oh.
max it.
See, I'm the opposite. I want like 3 different types, just like
Spam
big
them.
blobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you pick 3 good things, then
Yeah,
that's a great way
exactly.
to go.
Or you pick 3 good things and you have one minor bad thing that just
Mhm.
kind of cruises along and does bad things by itself, but sometimes it's really awesome.
I played against a new guy a few weeks ago that, yeah, he was doing Lizardman, Seraphon, whatever you want to call him, and he had like that list you're talking about. He's like, I've got 3 pterodons and 3 ripidactyls
Oh,
and
geez.
3 of these like shooty guys and then a bunch of sauruses, and it's like, what is the point of this army?
Right. So I think
What
a
does
big
each of these
point
units
of
do?
list building are things that you need to keep in mind, which are unit roles,
Mm-hmm.
how you're going to play, which is I'm just putting down as like board control, and to have a general plan of what your army is going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I want to sit back and shoot? Do I want to charge forward as fast as I can? Do I want to, you know, wrap around my opponent all sneaky like and
Right.
come at him from different sides?
Yeah, and that's a lot of like personal play style.
Right.
If you love to play in a particular way, you can probably build a powerful list that plays in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of pick, I mean, maybe play style is more important to you than what the models look like.
So why was talk about a couple of play styles? What are the different ways one could play this game?
I mean, there's only one right way to play.
Hyper aggressive.
Hyper
So
aggressive.
that's the Dan method.
That is
I gotta agree.
You gotta agree?
Yeah.
Well, from my history of playing orcs, like my main orc army right now for 40k is speed freaks,
Mm-hmm.
and my bikes it's just like a sprint to charge. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Like no other strategy.
yeah. Get them as buffed as you can and send them
Yeah,
forward.
just run at them.
Yeah. So that is definitely a way to play, which is the hyper aggressive. I'm not going to worry about the objective game as much as I am about
Right, 'cause
preventing
once
you from playing the
Sure.
objective game.
Yeah, throw you off the game.
You know, if you don't have an army left, I win.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
I've also seen the opposite of that, which is almost a defensive screen where you're taking objectives constantly.
So that's the more Tom way to play, is to say, I just want to score, I want to be able to fight a little bit, but I'm mostly interested in making you eat garbage all game
Yeah.
while I
Right.
try and run around and score objectives. That's like, we could call that the horror way to play. Just like lines and lines of horrors who are absolute garbage, and you've just got to waste time killing them.
Yeah, it's a very valid way to play. That's why when we play together, it's always a fun way because it's kind of this game of can I chew you up before you win?
Yeah.
So
And then another way that was like would have been way more common back in old fantasy, I guess, but can still work a little bit now, is more of like a castle kind of army. Like I'm gonna deploy. Like I come in with a set way of how I'm gonna deploy. I've got shooty stuff, and I'm just gonna try and like hunker up in a corner, blast you off the table,
Yep.
and then go score objectives. In old Warhammer, you didn't even have to worry about scoring objectives.
Right. So the
you just
objectives,
hunkered up and shot.
I think, when we talk about how to play, objectives are a huge part of it. You don't win the game by killing your opponent. I mean, unless you can kill your opponent on turn 3.
Right.
Unless you do it really well.
If you really, really kill your opponent, you can win. So I'm not saying you can't, but you do need to dedicate something to playing the objective game.
Right.
Because you will flat out lose by so much. And I have been on the receiving end of that, and I've dished out that end too.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than, ones where the opponent's objectives are heavily weighted if they're in their territory and you take them.
Right.
And you go park something on them, or, Duality of Death with Marathi, where you just park her on the objective to win.
I love, like, one of my favorite things is getting tabled but still winning the game. Because
Right,
I just
right.
run around, scored enough objectives, and I'm like, okay, you killed my whole army.
Yeah, and
All these
that
points.
realization where you've done the math at the top of turn 4 and you realize there's 2 turns left and there's no way your opponent can win.
Mm-hmm.
They can kill all your stuff, but you're so far ahead on points. So you do have to play the objective game. It is how you play Age of Sigmar, not even how you win. It's the important way to play competitively. If you're just doing your first couple of games as a scrum fight, yeah, you need to do those just so you know what units can fight what
Like
units.
basic mechanics.
Basic mechanic games, yeah. But when you actually sit down, it's so much more fun to play with objectives than the old school fantasy way of, who can kill the most to
Right,
who.
the most points, yeah.
So a large part of that, I would say, is, looking at the table and figuring out what terrain's on the table.
Well, even going back one step, building a list that has the tools.
Building a
to
list.
compete
Okay, yeah. We'll
on
step
any
back
of
to that.
Any of these scenarios, because they're all different.
And you don't necessarily have to take objectives in one way or another.
Right.
Sometimes you'll want to sit, sometimes on a objective, I kind of wrote it in my notes as minimum versus maximum commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So the game I played of Duality of Death recently was, I took one of them and did a minimum commitment. So Duality of Death has 2 objectives,
Mm-hmm.
and you score points based on how long you control those objectives. So every turn you score more points if you're still holding it.
Mm-hmm.
So I dedicated my entire army, except for Marathi, to take 1.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever my opponent put at me, he was fighting essentially my entire army, and then only Marathi to the other, because she can sit on it and only takes 3 wounds a turn.
Yeah. Well, that's the way to, if in Duality of Death, if you hold one objective all game and get the other objective even just one turn,
Yeah,
then
you
you've
win.
won the game. And that's actually true with a lot of these scenarios.
Mhm.
A lot of them are like, I have 2 objectives in my zone, you have 2 in your zone. If I hold mine all game and just score one of yours one single turn, I win the game.
Right. So there are other ways to hold objectives. So you can do, a common one for a lot of armies is to have these minimal commitment units, these 10-man skinks or 3-man screamer units or something that's just dedicated to running out, grabbing the objective and holding it as long as they possibly can, which is not going to be, you'll get it for that turn. Super lucky you'll get it the next turn. But, they're suiciding into the objective. Your opponent's going to remove them, but you have enough of them, or as
Or like we said, you just need
Death
that
can
one
bring
turn.
them back. Or you just need them for that one turn. So you can dedicate, a small amount of points in your list to do that,
Yeah.
or you can have backfield objective holders, stuff that has some pretty good range. I would recommend 20 inches or longer range.
Mm-hmm. Something
to just
that can impact the table while sitting. On
right,
the
so you
objective
can
all game.
park them on your objectives and go take your opponent's objectives with your army, and then these guys are sitting back there and plinking away and probably only causing 5 wounds, but that's not what they're on the board for.
Mm-hmm. So in the Gits, do you know how much like the minimum sized unit of just goblins costs?
I think it's
Let's say
120 points or something.
160 something. It's small.
Yeah, they're not a lot.
Yeah, just 20 goblins.
Yeah.
Was the minimum amount.
But they have, we have.
Buy them, put them on an objective.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't need to use a brick of Gits for it. You can just drop something else down there.
Points aren't actually in this book anymore.
Right,
They
they're in
did
the other
little,
book.
But if you put shooters in it, and
They can shoot off of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
why not?
Right.
And I think you really want to consider at least 300 points to dealing with objective game.
Mm-hmm.
Be it objective campers or, sometimes you can borrow in multi-purpose units. You can have an anvil that just parks itself on a
Yeah.
objective and you just can't move it.
Right.
So there's but then you're doing more of a maximal commitment. You're
Mhm.
committing, stuff to buff it, stuff to sit there, and you're planning to set up camp in your opponent's territory.
Right.
Which is more of how I play. I'm going to go fight you for your objectives.
Right.
And not allow you to fight me for my objectives. If you're making the fight happen
on your opponent's objectives, then you're in a good place.
Until something doesn't go right in the fight, you lose it, and your opponent takes one of your objectives.
Yeah, or exactly. If your opponent can deal with your hit and then send something over the top back into your backfield and just sneak an objective off you, then
you lose.
Then you lose the game.
Yep.
But whatever the way is of doing this, like we were saying before, you want to be able to go into every game with a plan of, okay, my plan is to go hard on this side, take this objective, hold these two, and I'll win the game.
Right.
If you come into a game and you can't come up with a way of winning like that, then it's time to look at the list again and think, maybe I didn't have the right tools.
And deployment has a large part of that as well.
For sure.
So, I mean, the other thing is, okay, so, the first real strategy move you make other than bringing the list is to deploy it.
Mm-hmm.
So the second move you make is your deployment, and watching how your opponent deploys is almost this fun game of tit for tat. There are some armies that you can do things like, essentially put stuff in deep strike,
Right.
sort of conceptually, because you just Canary Heartrenders can go up and hover above the battlefield. There's a bunch of different names for the same thing. They're all just deep strike.
Yeah.
But deploying those first allows you to see where your opponent is going to start putting some things down, whereas deploying them in the middle kind of masks maybe where you're going to really commit at that point. But yeah, watch where your opponents put stuff down. I still follow the old fantasy rules, deploy your long range stuff at the end.
I'm still stuck in the old fantasy mindset of okay, just a bunch of garbage goes on the table first until I've seen where my opponent's going. In Sigmar, obviously, there's the other wrinkle as well of to some degree wanting to out deploy your opponent so you get choice of turn.
Right.
I actually don't really care about that. I prefer to see where my entire opponent's army is going, and then
I think I care too much about it, and that affects my gameplay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or getting the choice of it.
Getting the choice.
Yeah.
I generally don't care at all.
Yeah, I need to be more relaxed when it comes to that, but I really try to win on deployment. It's not necessarily win the game on deployment, but have fewer deployments than my opponent. And I think I over prioritize that. I need to chill on that a bit.
That's a list building decision again. Do you put battalions in to kind of minimize your drops a little?
And where they go is really the deployment. So you need to look at what terrain's on the board. What I'm going to refer to as lanes, which is if you look at a board from above, it's essentially you have a 6x4, and then you kind of break it up into these sections that you can move stuff through.
Right.
Much like a lot of video games kind of use that concept. Most of the
the
MOBA concept, where you're going to be fighting in certain areas of the board, and you can kind of read that from your opponent. Unless they really decide not to fight you and run off somewhere else, you're going to be fighting in the large open areas.
Yeah, unless it's one of those badly set up tables where you just have this giant kill zone in the middle. No, it's just we're going to push into there.
Or your opponent blocks you as you try to run through a couple pieces of terrain and get out the other side. You end up bottlenecking yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, it was well played.
Thank you. That's what chaff is for.
That is a really good use of chaff. Just stop a hammer between a couple of buildings so you don't get to fully use it. Or move it around to... Yeah. Should have ran them. I don't know what I was thinking. We should have just not advanced as much. I always say that to myself after the game.
Well, you just said before your playstyle is...
Yeah, my playstyle is...
Go balls to the wall, get stuck in.
Get the Red Bull buffs on and charge them forward.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to go into a little more of all some of the different unit roles?
I think we can cover unit roles.
And maybe for Sophie's benefit, because we're kind of talking about her entry to the game, we can, for examples, we could pick out some GITS units that do these kind of things.
We
can pull in some other examples as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So I think the first I think one of the more important parts of the game is killing your opponent.
Disagree, but go on.
I mean, after the objective game, I think killing off their army is one of the more important roles that you can have. And I think there's...
I mean, it's definitely the best way to stop your opponent scoring objectives.
Right.
Yeah.
They can't score if they're all dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just obvious to me.
Yes.
And to do that, I've defined 2 types, and one of them I'm kind of borrowed from the General's Handbook, actually, and the other one we've been using for years. So we'll call them hammers and line breakers. So a hammer is it's either a unit or an individual model that will like almost run over anything that it touches. This is your goal for a proper hammer, is to just hit something so hard that after combat there's nothing left of whatever it bumps into. And a hammer on hammer fight, you'll have nothing left on either side typically.
A hammer on hammer fight is all about who gets to charge.
It's whoever gets to charge.
Right.
Whoever goes first in that combat is gonna win it.
So the classic, I mean, the example in the game at the moment would be the Ghoul King on the Terrorgeist.
Yeah.
The Flesh Eater model that can basically just take any unit in the game off the table.
Yeah. So the other thing that we should define is that these are roles, and models, units, etc. can have more than one role.
For sure. For sure.
I would say a line breaker is something smaller that you would almost park into the side during a big fight to just start chewing away more, or something that you can use to quickly hunt down a objective grabber of your opponents.
Yeah, or like when we talk about chaff, just something that clears out that little bit of annoying chaff that's in the way. So like a mini hammer, maybe. A scalpel?
Alright, we're going to pause.
Got it.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of the podcast. The link to the second part is down below. And you know what? While you're down there, leave a comment. We really love hearing from you. Oh, and by the way, this is Josh. I do the editing stuff for Chaotic Stupid. I'll pop in at the end of some of the podcasts or videos with little news and updates if we have any. We're creating more content, so definitely be patient. And we'll get that out there as soon as possible. And have a good one. See you next time. All that good stuff.